Hello friends and welcome back to lesson number 5. This is inclusive growth and this is the third video of this lesson. In this video we are going to study about what are the different challenges that India faces to achieve inclusive growth. Okay, so inclusive growth, we have seen that it is a kind of growth where all the sections of society, especially the vulnerable sections, benefit out of the growth. All the different regions of the country benefit out of the growth. Everybody has equal opportunity to participate in the economic growth process. So that kind of growth is called inclusive growth. So it is very easy to say, but it is very difficult to achieve. It is a very challenging thing. And what are the different challenges that come in achieving inclusive growth? We are going to see in this video. So there are various structural and systemic challenges that hinder the equitable distribution of benefits of economic progress. It is not an easy thing. There are various structural challenges, structural meaning which relates to how our economy is currently structured, how are the different laws and institutions in our country. What are the various systemic challenges, meaning the different institutional challenges, rules, regulations, policies, and the society in general, how it acts in a particular scenario, the ecosystem, everything. So there are various things involved here. There are significant barriers and challenges to achieving inclusive growth in our country, and we'll see them one by one. And the first one is obviously the regional disparities. So this is a kind of structural challenge that we have. Already there are various disparities, meaning there is unequal distribution of resources or unequal distribution of economic opportunity, economic growth when it comes to various regions in our country. So there is uneven development we see, urban versus rural, this is one. Then one state versus the others. Selected regions, meaning the particular states experience more growth than the other states. Example being that the states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, these are the progressive states. So these states experience more growth or they benefit more out of the growth process than the states like Bihar, UP and Odisha, which lag behind actually. So there is uneven development we see, and this is one of the biggest challenges to achieving inclusive growth. Then infrastructure gap is another thing. There is infrastructure gap, infrastructure differences from one region to another, it differs, which limits connectivity, market access and economic opportunity for various people. For example, you can see that in rural areas, the infrastructure is poor, the road connectivity is poor. There are various villages where you will not even find the basic roads, there will be kacha roads. So if the people don't have connectivity, how will they access markets? How will they sell their products? How will they do any economic activity? How will they go to hospitals? How will they go to schools? So basic infrastructure is very important actually, because it limits the capacity of people to work in an economic activity. Okay, so infrastructure plays an important role, and the difference between infrastructure is a major factor that hinders inclusive growth. Then obviously there is urban rural divide. We see that urban area has better infrastructure than the rural area. So urban area benefit more in terms of healthcare, education, employment opportunities, and rural areas are left behind. So these is what comes under the regional disparity. Then the next one is low job creation. This is another harsh reality that we have to face in our country. We are experiencing a kind of jobless growth for many years. So economic growth in India has not been labor intensive. In fact, it has been capital intensive. So although we are seeing economic growth of 6%, 7%, 8%, but it is not exactly converting into jobs. Okay, so economic activity or economic growth is not getting converted into jobs 100%, because the growth is fueled by capital intensive activities. So there is more investment in capital, more machineries are used, more automation and technology, which reduce the demand for manual labor. So people are not getting jobs. Very few people are getting benefited out of it. So it is not labor intensive. So this is a factor because of which then only the entrepreneurs or the big, wealthy people or highly skilled people only, they are able to get jobs and getting benefited out of the growth process, whereas the manual labor are not getting benefited. So their pockets are not earning incomes in such a scenario. Informal sector dominance, we still have over 80% people in informal sector where the wages are low, job insecurity is there, they can be fired anytime. There is no social protection, meaning they don't have any pension, they don't have any medical insurance, health insurance, any kind of other insurance. So social protection is also less. And skill mismatch is another big factor, which limits employability in our country. So there is a significant gap between the skills that the workforce has versus what the market demands, what the companies want, what the industries want. So this skill mismatch is a major factor, and because of this, even the companies are preferring to go for capital intensive investments rather than employing more people, because they don't want to, or because they are not getting the proper skills set that should be there in order to work in a given setup. Then let us look at the third factor. The third is lack of financial inclusion. So financial inclusion is very, very important for inclusive growth. We have seen this actually. So once people get access to finance like credit, banking services, insurance, they can do some business, they can be a part of economic activity. But if there is limited financial inclusion, then people will have less access to credit. There will be a digital divide is another factor. So digital illiteracy, people are not aware about various financial services, and because of all this, the penetration of schemes is also ineffective. So programs like Jan Dhan Yojana, they have include financial inclusion, but it has failed to failed on the implementation front. So financial inclusion is again a major criteria to look at the inclusive growth. So financial inclusion basically is a part of economic inclusion, a larger economic inclusion. So when we talk about economic inclusion, it means inclusive growth, and financial inclusion is a part of it. So this is financial inclusion. So economic inclusion also includes other things like getting jobs, getting opportunity, getting healthcare, getting education, getting sanitation, getting skills. And financial inclusion is one part of economic inclusion. So please be very clear about these two terminology, economic inclusion versus financial inclusion. Then the next one is the education and skills deficit. So this is very obvious. There is poor quality of education in our government schools. Majority of the people are enrolled in government schools, despite there is high enrollment now. So we see that there is 100% enrollment in primary education, elementary education, but the quality of education is poor. Vocational training is not being given, although it is part of the new education policy, but still it is not very well implemented. So only a small percentage of India's workforce received formal vocational training, which reduces their competitiveness in the global market. So this reduces the competitiveness in the global market, again, which will render them unemployable, and again they will not be part of the inclusive growth or the economic growth that is happening. And then there are of course regional and gender inequalities when it comes to education and skill. Girls are particularly affected in rural areas, and they face significant barriers to accessing education, because in rural areas you must be knowing the reality that in order to even study in 11th and 12th class, you may be forced to travel 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers, because the school is not available in your village. Even for high school also, for class 9, 10 also, you may be forced to travel 4 kilometers, 5 kilometers to a neighboring village or to a panchayat headquarter, etc. So it puts various barriers in front of children especially the girl children. So they are not able to go to school. Their parents don't allow them because of various safety reasons also, and also because of poverty, because they cannot afford to commute on a daily basis, for to school from home and again back. So for this we need to act, like constructing hostels for them. Again, that is a different discussion altogether, but try to understand that these are the various challenges that we are facing. Okay, then the next one is about poverty and inequality. So this is a very very big factor again which hinders inclusive growth. So see, you will see that inclusive growth aims to reduce poverty and inequality, and poverty and inequality hinders in inclusive growth. So it is a vicious cycle. So if there is poverty and inequality, there will not be inclusive growth. If there is no inclusive growth, we will not be able to reduce poverty and inequality. So there is a vicious cycle. We need to break this. So the persisting poverty is there, meaning there is inadequate access to healthcare, education, sanitation and housing, because of which if the people are not getting the basic facility, then you cannot expect them to have skills to go to school, to become employable, to gain employment in a good company. So these are the various factors which affect them. Wealth concentration, there is income inequality. Economic policies, they often favor large corporations and urban elites, exacerbating the income inequality. And social inclusion also, various marginalized communities like scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, minorities, they often face systemic discrimination. So this again keeps them behind the other people. So we need to work upon this challenge as well. Then there are agricultural challenges. So the productivity of agriculture is stagnant in our country. Agriculture employs over 40% of workforce still, but contributes less than 20% to GDP. So it shows that the productivity is low, income levels are low. Fragmented land holding is there. The land holding, fragmented land holding, meaning one person is holding very small amount of land, very small patch of land, because of which economies of scale cannot be achieved. Economies of scale meaning if you have large patch of land available with you, so you can buy some equipment, okay, some modern equipment, and you can use it on a big patch of land, so that it will be profitable and it will be affordable for you to purchase this equipment. But for example, if this equipment costs 25 lakhs and this is 10 acres of land, so and if you have only 0.5 acre of land, so the farmer which owns only 0.5 acre of land cannot purchase this 25 lakh equipment, because it won't be profitable for him. Similarly, for the farmer who owns 10 acre, 20 acres of land, it will be profitable for him to purchase this. So this is economies of scale, meaning he has a larger scale of land, larger patch of land, so it is economical for him to purchase the equipment or to modernize it. So it affects modernization. Then there are market access issues also. Farmers, they face inadequate market infrastructure, and there are exploitative middlemen also, still agents, which result in low earnings for the farmers. Then there are gender inequalities, low workforce participation by female. India in fact is one of the lowest female force participation rates globally, which limits economic potential of half of the population. So we can see this, we have seen this in the previous in the previous lessons also. There are wage disparities also when it comes to male and female. So women earn significantly less than men for similar work, which contributes to gender based economic inequality. Then another important point is governance and policy implementation. So there are various bureaucratic inefficiencies, corruption, delays and red tape. Okay, so try to know these words: corruption, delays, red tapeism, okay, impede the effective implementation of inclusive policies. So although we have very good policies, but the devil lies in implementation because of various factors on the ground, like bureaucratic delays, inefficiencies, red tapeisms. Okay, the policy which are intended for inclusive growth, they are not properly implemented. Policy misdirection may also be there. Many policies, they lack a focus on grassroots, okay, and they fail to address the systemic inequities. So there may be failure of policy also. Weak institutions is another factor. Poor enforcement of laws related to labor rights, okay, land laws, social protection and land reforms, they undermine the inclusivity that is intended. Then the next one is environmental and climate challenges, natural disasters. We often face natural disasters. Climate change is another factor which is affecting the agriculture a lot. Unseasonal rainfall affecting the agriculture. They affect poor and rural population disproportionately. So when we see that the effect of climate change, it is affecting the farmers more. It is affecting the poor people more, because if you see that there is a flash flood somewhere because of excessive rainfall, which is again an effect of climate change. So it affects the poor people more, because it is the poor people whose houses get flooded during such an event, and not the rich people. Similarly, there are problems in rural areas. Farmers, they are affected more. Their economic activity is directly impacted because of such events, natural disasters. Unsustainable development, we are facing rapid urbanization also. Industrialization is also rapid in some areas, which often neglect environmental sustainability, exacerbating inequities. So we are not taking care of the next generation when we are thinking about development today. So the intergenerational equity, which is an important part of inclusive growth, we have discussed this previously also, is not being taken care of when the development is not sustainable. And then finally, the healthcare access is very, very important. Like we talked about education, so healthcare is another area which is important for people to be participating in the economic activity, because it is the healthy population that will that will be more productive, that will generate more income for the country. So healthcare access is very, very important. Although we have improved healthcare after the national health mission, but again, rural areas and marginalized community, they lack access to quality healthcare. Okay, so quality of healthcare services is a very big factor. Then out of pocket expenditure is still high, although there are some assurance and insurance schemes like Ayushman Bharat, and many states have their own schemes. Out of pocket expenditure is more, and families are pushed into poverty because of this medical expenses. Then there is underfunding also. So although there is a lot of funds given to the national health mission program for infrastructure development, and for various missions like vaccination, immunization, etc., public healthcare is still underfunded in our country. There is insufficient facilities and also the doctors, personnel to serve the population effectively. So to conclude, we can say that India's inclusive growth aspirations are actually hindered by various systemic challenges. Okay, so the challenges are systemic and structural, as we have seen before. See, these are the important keywords that you should use in answer writing. So when we talk about the challenges for inclusive growth, you should use these words: systemic challenges and structural challenges. So what are the different systemic and structural challenges? So regional imbalances, low job creation, jobless growth, inadequate access to financial services, right? Financial inclusion. These are the various challenges. And how do we overcome them? So we have to adopt various strategies to overcome these challenges. So obviously it will require a multi-pronged approach. So since the problems are many, the approach or the fight towards it will also be multi-pronged. So it will include investment in rural infrastructure, education, skill development, financial inclusion, then various targeted interventions also to reduce inequality and ensure effective policy implementation. So whatever challenges we have talked about, we will have our strategy accordingly only. And if we don't address these challenges, then the vision of having an inclusive society, having an equitable and sustainable growth, it will remain elusive. Okay, so we won't be able to achieve it. In the next video, we'll see what are the different strategies that can be adopted to achieve inclusive growth in India. Thank you.